Dear colleagues, dear friends, good afternoon. Getting more and more people coming into the hall, and we have more area, and we have social distancing measures in place. Probably it's not so comfortable, but it's safer. Let's take our seats, and I think that you have been present at the plenary session, and you know the topics, and you know that special attention is paid to the fishery itself, but also to other areas from sea to the counters, and logistics plays a very important, significant part also in the economy. And the topic of our roundtable is how to get quality fish to the end consumer. A few words about some indicators of the industry over the last 8 months. As for the catch of the fish, we have about 3.5 million tons. This is the level of last year. Of course, we have a drop in pollock, about 200,000 tons, and it's quite significant. But overall, the indicators are quite good, and we have a growth of 200,000 tons, and we exported less, a drop of 17%, and due to that we have an increase in the supply on the domestic market, and that is why the volume of cargoes to be transported from the north and from the Far East, it has also grown. Dear colleagues, the music is playing. It's a good accompaniment, a good support for us. Thank you. And together with that, we face certain challenges. And we need to understand that besides the coastal transportation routes, we have the Northern Sea route, and Rosatom is helping here a lot. And we will start with that, with the Rosatom. Mr. Sergei Chimko, project manager of the project office for the Arctic development from Rosatom State Atomic Energy Corporation. The floor is yours, please.
Микрофончик включите. Так, да.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for this opportunity to tell you about the participation of Rosatom, not only in the development of the Northern Sea route, but also in the project that we will be discussing, the transportation of high-quality fish, bringing it to the end consumer. A few words about the NCR and the participation of Rosatom in its development. The Northern Sea route is a transport corridor that runs across the water area of the Arctic Sea of the Russian Federation, 3,500 nautical miles, and it is separated by the Karski gate that separates the inland from the islands, and navigation is quite complicated along this route, and almost all the water area is through the ice. And if we have a look at the chart from the below part, the Institute of the Arctic and Antarctic has carried out a research that shows us that only 4 to 5 months are favorable for navigation, and in winter NSR navigation has not changed, but the area of ice has grown significantly over the last 40 years, and it led to the following situation. The main flow of transit ships, they navigate during summer, also from the 1st of July until the 30th of November. Then the Arctic winter starts. But in 2019, there was a shift in navigation, and very early vessel call was carried out. And in 2020, it finished later than usual, and it ended up in January and February. Why was it possible? possible. We had new vessels with new types of vessels, and also the use of high Arctic classes. Christophe de Margerie, that belongs to Novatek, and it transports the LNG, and taking into consideration the prospects of the development of NSR as a transport corridor, it looks quite interesting. A vessel of this class can move with the ice of the width of 1.5, 1.7 meters, and that is how we achieve the full capacity of use of the engine, and we have about 10 knots of speed in the under the ice conditions, and it gives us a very good commercial speed. Why does Rosatom invest into the development of NSR? In 2018, the federal law was adopted, and Rosatom was assigned as an infrastructural operator of NSR, and it was done in order to operate efficiently the infrastructure, the port, the facilities, and in the structure of Rosatom, we have Rosatom float or fleet, and we have 5 icebreakers, and on the slide we see the current situation and also the forecast for the future. Currently we have 5 icebreakers, and 3 of them are old, and we know when they will be decommissioned. Also the Arctic icebreaker, and it is the new class, and another one is being built at the Baltic shipyard, and it has 2 drafts, and it can be operating in the Siberian under the conditions of the Siberian rivers, and in deep water conditions. It is planned to build another 4 icebreakers at the shipyard in Belakameny of the Far East. The LEADER project has been already launched, and they are already building it. And there is no icebreakers of its kind. 120 megawatts is the capacity, and you cannot see such examples in the world. 2 atomic reactors are installed on board of this icebreaker. It will be operating on this NSR route, and it is planned to be used for transit navigation in the structure. We have a hydrographic enterprise that is responsible for hydrographic filming and also the mapping of the depth and the building of infrastructure. NSR and ports are different from the other ports in terms of the special ice protection measures introduced there. Besides that, Rosatom Corporation and Atomflot are managing the navigation along the NSR, and we have the headquarters that is monitoring and coordinating all these activities, monitoring the navigation across this route. And on Friday at the Far Eastern Forum, the large Northern Sea route, this term was used for the first time. It was coined. It is defined by the sea border with Norway and with Korea. And why was it used there, this terminology? In order to show that this transport corridor should be limited the territorial waters of the Russian Federation, and it should bring together Murmansk, the largest port of Russia, Murmansk in the north, and Vladivostok in the Far East. And we need to ensure the overall development of all the infrastructure. And in order to implement these projects for the navigation after Rosatom Corporation announced was assigned as an infrastructure operator, we introduced the plan that consists of 3 stages, and by 2024 we need to build the necessary infrastructure, and by 2030 we should already have all-year navigation, and by 2035 we plan that Northern Sea Route and the big Northern Sea Route will become competitive transit corridors. We are already having some of the vessels moving along NSR. Last year, 61 vessels. In 2019, it was about 30 vessels. So the turnover and the flows are growing, and some of them they are under Russian flags, and some of them belong to the international companies. And in order to introduce infrastructural changes, the plan includes the following areas: to have the rescue vessels. In 2024, we will have 22 vessels of this kind, and now we have 12 to 13 vessels.
At the same time, it is the ice-resistant ships to provide assistance in case of emergency in the ice-covered water area. The entity that I have mentioned about will do the hydrographic coverage by 2024. The Arctic Sea are shallow waters, so it's not only the harsh ice conditions, it is necessary to understand what are the safe depths over there. So the hydrographic coverage will measure the depth, but the special ice-resistant hydrographic vessels will have to be built to be able to operate in the harsh ice conditions. The ports will be refurbished, and the ice information system, Sever, that is north, will be upgraded. It was developed at the time of the Soviet Union, and it provided the meteo and eye condition information, and it would be possible to predict the routes for the convoys of ships, and it will cover all the Northern Sea route. The meteo station with 168 refurbished will be established. Satellite groupings to provide for communications, meteo information, and remote Earth probing. The latest is very important to provide information about the ice conditions, to provide information to the headquarters for optimum routing of the convoys. The development of the communication system is important. In last year, the fiber optics cable laying started, and it will be completed by 2026 between Murmansk and Vladivostok. It will be of great importance to all those living and working in the Arctic. Now, the haulage of fish by Atomflot. Between 2019 and 20, there were 2 pilot trips, 204 containers between Petropavlovsk and St. Petersburg was done. Besides icebreakers, there is Sevmorput licht. It can accommodate containers. There are 200 slots for connection to the power, and it is capable of the commercial freight trips. And in 2021, we did not have that particular trip because the refrigerating equipment was not available. And as a result of the disbalance with the container pandemic, overloading of Chinese and the European ports not capable of handling the containers, the equipment for refrigerator was not available in 2021, so there will be no trips in 2021. But the trips of the previous years has uncovered a number of issues for the trips of the container ships to be lucrative. One is the lack of the schedule, the lack of regular trips, the lack of the proper tariffs. From the point of the ship owners, it is the lack of capacity from west to the far east, because when the container carrier comes to St. Petersburg, there is no cargo to take it back. And the ports of Murmansk and Arkhangelsk are not quite capable of receiving the containers. The ports do not have the required number of the plugs to connect it to the containers. The lack of the freighter, the lack of the forwarding operator that can provide the one-shop stop and provide additional services to the freighters. That is assuming all the responsibility for the haulage and the deficiency of the container equipment, and I have mentioned it already. Now, the most important question, how to get the quality fish to the consumers in the Northern Sea route, and what efforts will be undertaken in 2022, and what we do by the state cooperation, by the other federal agency authorities. And not less than 3 trips of the Sevmor put are scheduled in navigation of 2022 from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok, with the stops in Murmansk and Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. The timing, 55 days. The exact schedule will be announced before the navigation with the exact dates when the port calls will be. The tariffs will be registered for all the navigations. The logistics operator will be engaged in the operation for the freighters to sort out all the issues of sanitary, veterinary issues, etc., and the other services. And there will be required container equipment provided by the logistics operator to handle the haulage. That's about it. I will be happy to answer the question. Thank you, Sergey. It's an interesting story. You have touched upon the issues, and I would like to ask a question. We have Vladimir Walter from Seraglaska terminal. What's your vision on the implementation? The ship is quite bulky. Is the port infrastructure ready? And good afternoon, colleagues. Great talk. And the terminal has been participating in the trips that were mentioned, and our terminal handled the consolidation of the products, and in St. Petersburg we have taken it to the end consumers as far as the readiness of the infrastructure is concerned. This year, in December, we will complete the refurbishment of the terminal December 2021, the number of the sockets will be some 600, and it will be sufficient for the 3 voyages, and we will be ready to provide the forwarding services. As far as Murmansk is concerned, hard to say, because it's a bulk terminal rather than a container terminal. We will have to do a lot about the infrastructure of the terminal. So it is difficult for me to say whether it will be realistic to finish it next year. And a few words on the equipment. As of now, the processing is being changed in the industry. The specialized temperature modes are required. That's why the selection of the equipment should be very meticulous and thorough. At the moment, there is no information what would be the manufacturers of the equipment, but I think it is important to emphasize that the equipment should be maintained both in the ports and also maintained during the trips. And whether it is Murmansk or St. Petersburg that the products are taken to, it is needed not in St. Petersburg or Murmansk, but in the central part of Russia, like in Moscow or Ryazan, etc. And so taking it there from the ports, it's quite a challenge. The practice of the 3 voyages have shown it that moving it onshore by road from the ports to the central part of Russia was quite a challenge. Yes, we will talk about onshore transportation, but there was an emphasis made on the shortage of containers in the previous presentation, and we have Maersk, Eastern Europe, Alexander Dobrakov. And a question for you. How can we make the transportation in containers, both by sea and onshore? Thank you. I think the subject matter is very important, and I would like to thank the Federal Agency of Fisheries for invitation to talk over here, and I hope it's due to the high-quality services that we provide doing the logistics. I would like to talk about our operations. Maersk is a logistics integrator. We have a track record of success of more than 100 years. We have some 450,000 refrigerated containers. We have some 800 vessels, and we own a group of terminals. In Russia, it is Nakhodka, Ust-Luga, and Moby Dick in St. Petersburg. In the past few years, we have been developing the haulage in refrigerated containers. We do not try to segment it to the transportation by sea and by railroad. We undertake to provide services from door to door, understanding that the tasks that the fishermen catchers are doing relate to catching fish, not taking care of the logistics. That's why our company is focusing on providing the transportation services together with Narabo and the Serra Glaska company. We load the cargo freight into the containers near Kamchatka, and we are quite successful. We provide export services from Kamchatka, and we haul freight to Moscow, St. Petersburg, both by sea and railroad. We combined different modes of transportation, and I'm absolutely sure that the Northern Sea route will be one of the options. Variability is very important today, and containers provide for that. I would like to suggest that all who are working in the industry, to pay attention to this segment, not as something complementary, but it opens up the opportunities that bulk cannot reach. What have we done in Russia? We have invested into the refrigerated equipment. We built a refrigerated warehouse by St. Petersburg. We have a division for fruit and vegetable and for frozen fish. And we have plans to expand it. And referring to what Vladimir has said, understanding that port is not the final destination. And that's why, jointly with our colleagues from the Polar Star, we are developing the railroad services. We make use of these diesel-generated containers, and we provide services to whole lots. It is the trains of containers, and we have trains from St. Petersburg to Novosibirsk. It is about bananas, then fish, exporting meat from Moscow, and all those deliveries are done on schedule. And the freighters know that there are regular trips. So containers is the right solution to provide high-quality transportation services, and I think it will pay out in the near future. The more so that we understand processing is high on the agenda, and that's why bulk is less profitable. That's why we are prepared to provide support for containerization. And what should be done to support us is the Russian railroads should should have faster passage, and the ports should handle the refrigerated cargo. First, give it a priority. We are maintaining contacts with the customs, and we have a transit train from Asia to Europe for dry bulk. And it takes us 4 hours to have customs clearance instead of previous 2 days. If the procedures are expedited for the refrigerated containers, then the quality of the products will be higher. The containers segment, just like all the rest of the industry, is facing challenges, issues because of the pandemic. We do not expect that all the solution will be found in 2022. We expect that in 2023 the situation will change for a better. There are many reasons why, because the logistics disruptions have a ripple effect. There are delays in supplies, and we should use more ships, more containers to haul the same amount of cargo. Anyway, we expect that the situation will turn for better in 2022 and 2023. And when saying that the container logistics is high quality, then it's necessary to do planning, to look ahead. For example, now in September, we are planning all the containerized freight flows in 2022. And because it won't be possible to get a container at this spot market. That's why long-term planning makes the industry stable and provides high quality. That's it. Ready to answer the questions, if any.
Thank you, Alexander. It's quite clear. And I think that fishermen's community has listened to what you said, and they will be planning it in advance in order to avoid the situation that you have mentioned, like what is happening in August and September. It was quite an interesting block about the transport, and now I suggest we should move to another aspect, and fishery companies are integrating, are cooperating, like we learned at the Far Eastern Forum and the Eastern Forum. And here with us we have the representative of Riba, of fish, of the Russian Federation, and we have not had such a project before. So, Alexander, please, the floor is yours. Thank you. You know, I see in the audience some familiar faces of people. I know them, I have known them for many years, and they're representatives of the industry, and probably they can recall the discussion, very similar discussion that we used to have in 2015 before a presidium of the State Council, where they announced the global reform in the fishing industry. And now, entering the industry from the very start, and I would like to express my opinion. But there was no breakthrough over the last 6 years, because in 2015 we discussed the topic related to containers and the quality of the railways, of how they function, the situation at the port facilities. So the situation was quite similar, and if we compare the two pictures between 2015 and 2021, and colleagues from NARAB, their terminal is probably one of the major differences between those two years on the logistics map that we can see. And these discussions are quite important always, but I think that practical changes are even more important. And here, fortunately or maybe unfortunately, this crisis and the challenges that we are facing because of the COVID pandemic will lead faster to some practical results, because only when something bad happens we tend to change. And the project that Riba RF is responsible for is aimed at significantly changing the current landscape and picture. And overall, our mission is to bring together all the elements of the logistic chain in the fishery industry and to get the general picture. And I think that over these years we have not managed to do it. And the first stage of achieving this goal is to restore, to create the network of the state-of-the-art fishing port facilities. And this project was announced at the Eastern Economic Forum. And let's not view that as a strict configuration. And we have Murmansk, Vladivostok, and also Korsakov and Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. These are four points we should be starting from with our project, and at each of these points we plan to build a state-of-the-art fishing port that will include new refrigerator capacities and also infrastructure for the storage of biological resources, live biological resources, at some points, some additional processing capacities. And besides the infrastructure, what is important and what the colleague from Maersk has already mentioned, I fully support this viewpoint. The port is not only about infrastructure, but also a high-quality service that is provided based on the right digitalization, and also integrated service with the state services or gosuslugi. And we see our goal in building this type of ports with a competitive service where we will have the proper integration with the state services. And in one of these points, as we can see, in future, you may have the fishing stock exchange. It has been discussed widely in the industry, and we talked about it at the Eastern Economic Forum, and we see that the state would like to take practical steps there, and it is very important for this project to be implemented, to have the state-of-the-art infrastructure in place. And we think that this infrastructure can be built in one of these points, in one of these sites, and we are ready to invest private funds into this project, and we think that we can do that without even state participation and state support. As for the timeline, it's about 3 to 4 years. It's the real timing, and it can be implemented within this schedule, and we have already taken some practical steps, and Riba RF cooperation is the unity, and any actor of the industry may join us. We will not make these projects closed type projects, and the infrastructure that will be built in the framework of this project may be used by a wider range of stakeholders of the industry. It's not built for two companies that have established this cooperation. We are open for cooperation and are interested to do that together. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexander. Maybe it is difficult to perceive everything just by ear, listening to you, but I'd like to say that it's accessible, it's an open story, and it is open for joining other participants and stakeholders, and what has been mentioned at the Eastern Economic Forum and in the strategy up to 2035, the necessary regulations and acts will be elaborated, and in order to talk about it, we invited the stock exchange of the feedstock of St. Petersburg, and he will tell us about how it functions. Vasily Mikhailovich, please. Probably many of you have a question, how are we related to it, the topic of the stock exchange, and actually we are directly related to it, and the stock exchange is about selling the real product, and the transaction that is closed at the stock exchange, it is ended up with the delivery. And can you please turn on my presentation? Thank you. So let's talk about the stock exchange. It was established in 2008 by decree of the President and the government of the Russian Federation, and the markets, in order to guarantee the safeguarding of their guarantees and major shareholders listed here. And as for the stock exchange, it is growing fast, and we exceeded 1 trillion of rubles in turnover. This year we continue our growth, and we have more and more products and goods presented in the stock exchange, and we have the market prices introduced there, and we are moving towards achieving our goals. And we see quite a promising trend on the biological resources market, and we will be actively developing this segment. As for our main products, petroleum products, and just for you to imagine it, that all of you use cars. Every fourth liter of petroleum, it was actually purchased at the auction of at our stock exchanges. For fertilizers in agriculture, there is an active consumption. Each 10 tons in the Russian soil, it is also purchased at the stock exchange. So these approximately 10% of petroleum products, it is higher because companies like the tools that we are offering. And last year we had 25% of the overall turnover sold at the stock exchange. Also, the state policy for the development of the stock exchange trade, and we have the decree of the President on the main areas of the state policies to develop competition, and it is one of the major elements of the state policy. And also there is a resolution of the government on the plan of events to develop their competition in different sectors of the economy of the Russian Federation, and we will continue living in this paradigm. And the state regulation, for you not to think that it is a private organization, stock exchange is undertaking its activities based on the federal law on the organized auctions, and we are performing this function in accordance with the certificate of the Bank of Russia, and their requirements are quite strict. You cannot just establish stock exchange. There are only few stock exchanges in the Russian Federation, and now there are only 2 to 4 stock exchanges operating on the market, and more than 90% of operating of the stock exchange are concentrated on the platform of our stock exchange. And if each transaction should be cleared and should be properly performed when we deal with the transaction that have been closed at the stock exchange with the proper flows of goods, and it is licensed activities with the strict requirements on the part of the regulator, and it is undertaken by the Bank of Russia, and the agreements that are signed at the stock exchange, they are standard ones, and also the regulator is controlling it, and the rules of the game are well known. There are no pitfalls, and transportation prices will not change. It will be in line with the standards that have been set up, and the good is sold at the auction in accordance with the special mechanism. Each contract is standardized. The characteristics are set for each industry, and the cleaning organization is undertaking all the calculation as controlling the agreements. And we have goods, we have the basic price, so we specify the place where it will be, located, and the specifics are defined. And what does it give us? The transparent markets, the efficiency increase, anti-monopoly regulation, and the development of competitiveness in the industry. For seller, it is an additional channel of selling, increasing profit, because we eliminate intermediaries, and also low cost for closing transaction, the mitigation of anti-monopoly rules, and for those who purchase goods, these are guarantees of delivery and guarantees of the high quality of the product. On the 30th of March, we have had the first auction of aquatic biological resources, the frozen pollock. It was an experimental project, and we used the storage facilities in Vladivostok. The first shipment was bringing it out of the port by automobile transport, and we have worked on that after March, and the conclusions were quite positive. And also the freight wagons, it was the supply, the delivery by the railway, and the pilot start, the pilot launch. It attracted the attention of the Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian government. Mr. Trutnev noted that stock exchange trade in the fishery complex is a very necessary measure in order to ensure the openness and the transparency. And Ms. Talabayeva, member of the Committee of Agri-Industrial Policy, has also appreciated this project. And now, what do auctions look like? We are preparing the launch. It is planned to be carried out in the fourth quarter of this year. I will not enumerate everything. We have basic transportation and two bases in the central region and in Siberian region, and in the foreseeable future we will also include there the Ural region, and these regions are the main consuming regions, and that is how we will continue developing this cycle. How can you participate in those auctions? The simplest way to do that through the brokerage, and they are accredited. They have the permanent accreditation at the stock exchange, but it is a one-time transaction, like from 1 to 4 times per year. It is simpler and less expensive for you to use the services of the intermediary or brokerage, not to buy accreditations yourselves, and you do not incur any cost, direct costs. You pay a commission. It is not very high, 0.5%. We do not know exactly what it amounts to, but for one-time operation, it's quite enough. And one ticket for independent participation is 5,000 rubles, some additional costs, and then this information is given on the slide. And I know that there are companies emerging on the market in the Far East, and some real traders on the aquatic biological resources, and to become brokers, it's quite a natural thing for them, and the functions are quite identical. And it means an additional services to what they have already rendered to consumers. And some of people who do not fully understand what stock exchange looks like, and it is 20,000 rubles. This is the sum of money that confirms that you will be able to pay some additional costs. For example, if you decide to pull out of the stock exchange and to stop your accreditation. And 11,000 rubles, this is the price of place on this stock exchange. For example, if you trade once a week, so 11,000 rubles looks less if you consider all the trade that you can do there. And you see the commission to clearing companies, and if we compare that to the intermediaries commission, it is not so high. And what brokers have been accredited for our stock exchange for aquatic biological resources, you can see them on the slide, and we posted this information on the website, so you can read more on our website. It's the most informative resource. We have that in different languages, in Russian, in English, in Chinese, and you can find there the necessary information. And you can see spymax.com. There is a section dedicated to aquatic biological resources, which documents are necessary to get the accreditation, all the specifications, all the lists of products that will be traded in the upcoming future, in the fourth quarter of this year. Another aspect, we have another section. We can provide our presentation. We have videos that explain how the auction is structured. It's like it's a serious thing, but it helps you to understand how it is done. And another video explains to you how you can become a participant, and it is an informative video how you can get the accreditation. Many people think that it is very difficult, but it will actually take you about 5 to 7 days, and of course it can take up to 2 to 3 months if you do not understand how it will be done. And give this as an assignment to one of the employee, and there were some records of 3 months.
And the last but not the least, how to take part in a tender, and it has got a list of the services. All is available in the animation. We have 6 representative offices in Moscow, St. Petersburg, in Perm, in the Urals, Irkutsk and Tyumen, Siberia, and Vladivostok in the Far East. And with the increase of the activity, the number of the subsidiaries will be growing. There's staff available that will provide information and services and help to the buyers and sellers that are prepared to turn for the services to our exchange. So please be assured that we take care of the rights of the bidders, and jointly we will set up the full-fledged market mechanism, and it will positively affect the prices. We will first cover the domestic market, and then we will go beyond the borders, and then we will be the entity influencing the global prices. While I was getting ready for the round table, then it occurred to me, why should the exchange need fish? And then another question, and is it too difficult to become a broker? But we have Andrei Semenikin, and that's he's a broker company, and so please tell us, is it easy to become a broker or not? Esteemed colleagues, good afternoon. Alexei has given you the details of the exchange, and he explained how it works, and I've been a trader for more than 10 years, and indeed we were looking forward to when any of the financial entities would pay attention to this industry and start regulating it, applying the required standard, because all the attempts to set up the exchange were failed. These were not attempts, were not successful. Of course, we are talking about logistics at the round table, and both for the buyers and sellers, it's a headache. And for Russia, being a large country, it's quite difficult to get fish to the end users. But the correct mechanism of purchasing transaction is required. It is it is high time to have it. It's a must, because there are cases when there's no delivery after the transaction is finalized, and that's why St. Petersburg Exchange as an entity would eliminate all the risks for both sellers and buyers. And I would like to mention about our company that we are registered as a broker. That's what Andrei has been asking, whether it's difficult to do that. If you get emerged, if you are thorough about it, it's not that difficult. It takes 2 weeks to get registered. We received the advice of the specialists at the exchange, and they've given us all the necessary consultative services, and the civilized trading through exchange is a good starting point for all the fishery industry in Russia, and I am sure that the oil industry is a demonstration of that, and that 25% of the market sales is done through the exchange. So I think the fishing industry should follow the suit. So if you are well equipped, it takes some 2 weeks to get registered. Okay. And colleagues, let's change the subject. Let's switch to quality. We haven't been talking that the temperature mode is not observed at all the times, and as Mr. Sinev has been talking at the previous session. So, Mikhail, what's the way out? How can we ensure quality? Thank you, Andrei. With all due respect to the previous speakers, there was a discussion on the smart logistics and infrastructure. It is part and parcel of ensuring quality fish as well, but it's an answer to the question how to get fish to the end user. But the subject matter is how to get quality fish. So make yourselves comfortable. I will tell you how. So let us first define what kind of product fish is. And I have a couple of definitions. It is quite a tricky food in transportation, and freezing is the most widely distributed method of preserving it to ensure quality and transport it to the end user. And at that, the water in the tissue turns into ice, and as a result, the fermentive chemical and physical processes in the tissue end. And at that, the considerable changes in fish occur after thawing or the fluctuation of the temperature. And the crystal structure of ice as a result of the fluctuation of the temperature within the limits of 1 degree of Celsius is turned into large crystals, and as a result it decreases the quality, reduces the quality, and when the temperature rises, the amount of the denatured protein increases, and the fish fat oxidizes, and it worsens the taste, look of the fish. And as a result, it's not allowed to thaw the frozen food, and in accordance with para 52b, the frozen food should be stored not higher than minus 8 degrees. It means that when we catch it within 2 hours, minus 18, so sea, coast, storehouse, warehouse, it should be under minus 18. When it gets to Moscow, it is still minus 18. Truck, minus 18. Storeroom at this storeroom, minus 18. And then shelf, minus 18. That's what it means, a continuous refrigeration. That's what the conference is about. What's happening today? In July, fish gets to the shore, and the railroad cars are obsolete, and the ships are also obsolete, and when it gets to the shore, it is already minus 16 or even higher. Then it is transshipped to the refrigerated containers and to the refrigerated cars, and until all the batch is unloaded, it's over there in the open. And if the refrigerated cars are working, then the thermal insulated cars do not maintain the required temperature, and they lose minus 1 degree, and it's just like the insulated thermos, and the tea, if you keep it over there, it will be cold already in 2 days. And then, after the fish is delivered to the railroad, then the regulator checks the quality, and doing it twice, they violate the temperature mode. And as a result, instead of between 8 and 11 days, as the railroad claims, they can do that. We add another week to put the railroad cars into the trains. And if it's the insulation cars, and they're being used in the summer, if we offload it in the summer, it is minus 16 degrees. Then they are on the way to the central part of Russia, and losing temperature on the way. And so we have checked the actual temperature of the offloaded fish, and we have an opportunity to track the insulated railroad cars, and we have automatically accompanied it with the certifications. In 2019, in June and July, there were 126. It was minus 18, then minus 17.9, and then in Yekaterinburg in 18 days. And you will have to bear that it was the ambient temperature is plus 30 degrees, and so we had the certificates and with the reading of the temperature, and the certificates have been showing us that the temperatures, the registered temperature which was entered into the certificate was minus 18 plus 3, but when we physically measured the temperature, it was minus 12. So it meant that the readings were falsified. That means that as long as we do not have the persons responsible for the maintaining of the proper temperature mode, we won't be able to deliver high-quality fish to either Moscow or St. Petersburg from the Far East. So if we wish to do that, and if we want to get the quality fish to the consumers, and it refers not only to the fish but to the other food products, then there should be a responsible entity that would be running the continuous temperature chain from catch till sales. There should be a continuous tracking of the temperature mode. And a year ago, jointly with the regulator and GLONASS, we have been sending the water biological resources from the Far East to Novosibirsk, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. We've been continuously tracking it and sending information to GLONASS through GLONASS to GIS system. The experiment was deemed positive, and a number of the regulations are being developed now, but it's only one of the links of the large chain. So if the railroads are doing something to maintain order as far as the temperature mode of the Eurasian states is concerned, I'm not so sure about the other links. We are developing a document in the government of the Russian Federation of expanding this document for the other participants of the transportation and storage. And it's not only about the violation of the temperature mode, but what's awful is that all those that are participating in the chain, they do not have the true information of what was the temperature on the way. And the consumers in the store do not know how was it kept. It might be stored at minus 18 in the store, but no idea how the things were when on the way until it got into the store. And so the housewives are not aware. And for the continuous refrigeration chain to be working in Russia with the mentality of Russians, the federal law on continuous refrigeration chain should be enacted for all the stakeholders to be liable, to observe the regulations and be held liable for failure to observe those. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, we should think hard. Andrei, may I have my comments? Yes, of course. I would like to make a remark. I have mentioned that we have 450,000 containers, and all the containers are fitted with the temperature and humidity monitoring system, and the information is available in the account of our customers. But I support your ideas. Maersk company is the only company that holds the containers at sea, that takes care of the quality. I know how you are connected to the network, and how you have the designated persons that makes around to measure, to check the temperature. And thank you, and I hope that the other company will be following the suit of the Maersk company, and gradually the continuous refrigeration chain requirement will be observed. We have Dmitry Gorokh, representative of the Russian railroads, and he is from one of the subsidiaries of the Russian railroads, and he will tell us about the prospects of optimizing the transportation. Vitaly, the floor is yours. First of all, I would like to thank the Federal Agency on Fisheries for the invitation, and I would like to tell the participants what we have done and what are the plans for the future. And I would like to talk about our joint work with the Ministry of Agriculture and the regulators to control to monitor the quality of the freight. Next slide. Okay. We realize that speed is important for our customers, and there are a number of the services that are being developed. There are like expedited or fast refrigerator trains and the container trains, and we are hauling more fish. In 2021, we have hauled 40,000 tons of fish already in 2021, and so it will be more than last year.
And we have 3 lines for refrigerator trains, and the speed is 1,200 kilometers per day, and 40 lines have been developed from the Far East, and we have 40 stations on this route across the territory of the Russian Federation. They are already existing. Colleagues have mentioned that it is about 10 to 12 days, and this is the norm that has been already achieved by us. And last year we started launching the transportation projects, transportation of fish from Murmansk, and we can be competing with the automobile transport, and we understand that the overall volume, the largest volume, is transported by cars, but we will be still developing this area, and we have different project solution, and it can be as widespread as it is in the Far East in other regions of Russia as well. I'd like to draw your attention that with all things being equal, the impact on the environment and eliminating the carbon footprint, the use of railway is very important in order to achieve this goal. I would not like to repeat some things, but I'd like to say that this speed has been already implemented in practice, and reliability of deliveries, also the timeline fulfilling the obligation, and the level is 90 98.4%. It's quite high. And I would like to talk also about infrastructural project, called Express project. And here we do not have the maneuver operations, and the loading and offloading will be done during the technological stops in Vladivostok, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and there are some preliminary investment also in place, and we think that it will foster the availability of this service of the transportation of fish not only in centralized hubs, but also there where we do not have such a large volume of consumers, and there is no possibility to accept this volume of cargoes. And specifically, I'd like to mention this topic of the storage of fish, and we have been discussing that a lot. It's in electronic turn over the electronic document processing helps us with the fulfillment of the timelines, and 95% of all applications and 83% of fish. Here we have no human participation in it, and before that we used to have a long process, and together with Rossельхознадзor and the Association of Asshops, we have carried certain work, and as a result we achieved the cancellation of the repeated physical control at some of the destination points that used to be there before. And of course it means that we do not lose so much time. And another significant factor, and Alexander is right, to comply with the conditions of the transportation, and we have to ensure the necessary temperature conditions, and it's not the responsibility of RGD, but we are interested in providing those conditions at the rolling stock that we have in accordance with the regulation documents. And one of the colleagues has already mentioned that there are some strict requirements of Eurasian regulation, and for fish it is minus 18 degrees, and we have this control already in place. It has been already mentioned as well that it is very easy to exercise this control, but it's about thermos and about 30 and about the wagons that have been there for 30 years already. And in the new edition of the document, it is stipulated that from the 1st of January 2022, all transport vehicles should comply with the certificates of the European Association, but now it has been postponed until 2023. But we would like that to be put into practice as soon as possible, and the Russian railways, as soon as this project is implemented, will be ready to consider the integration of information systems between the Ministry of Transport and the Russian railways in order to exercise the logistic control of the rolling stock. So if we have the certificate, it can continue the operation. If not, then it will not be possible, because that will help us to ensure the delivery of the high quality products. That is it for my presentation. I'm ready to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much. It's clear that HD is included into the logistical supply chains, and it is quite comfortable to interact with you. And there were some changes into the ruling of 406, the reimbursement of the tariff for fish transportation, and now they are resolving some issues related to regulations, and we hope that it will be actually successfully put into practice, and it will help us to transport successfully fish from the Far East to the other regions. And what is happening actually at some regions, and the interaction that we have, Mr. Nikitin, the head of SPB Transport Systems, and quite recently he has visited some port facilities at the Far East, and I'd like to give the floor to him so that he can express his viewpoint. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will not surprise you probably with the description of the situation that we have at the Far East and my visit to the terminals. I will share my subjective opinion. We have been in this business for a long period of time, the business of transportation. I think that in the domestic market and the struggle for the end consumer, what we are discussing today, it's no longer interesting for us, because consumer is a client that comes to the store, and he or she purchases the end product. But it's a very far distance from this client to us, because the clients, they come to the retail stores, and it's a very long supply chain with many elements, including, for example, the traders in the Far East. And this chain and the responsibility for the product is not quite completely clear, and who is the beneficiary of high-quality transportation, and who is ready to do that. We are ready to cover the risk, certain risks, but we are the transport specialists. But how can we sell it? And I do not remember how long ago it was, the distribution of responsibility between Rospotrebnadzor, the Ministry of Transport, and there are some disruptions in this supply chain, and there are standards that are specified, but there are problems arising, for example, in the canned fish food with low quality herring, for example, and the consumers, they have to pay for that with rubles, and we have to introduce additional elements into the value-added chain, and we have some contradictions in it, and I clearly see it as a contradiction. Probably here we can add also a large number of public organizations represented in the fishing company, in different types of fish, like in beams and other types of fish, and it's not completely clear whom should we talking to, and we do not have the legislative basis and regulatory basis, and industry standards should be discussed. And the technical contradiction, our internal disputes with the Russian railways, I hope we will we will find the common ground there. But there are some problems with the commercial disruptions, and operators are responsible for that, and the documents and the legislative basis, it comes from the Russian railways, and they adopt a very thorough approach with giving us the certain rights, and probably we will remove certain headache from Russian railways, and we will exercise some functions for working with the documents, with the part of the rolling stock from the Russian railways. And from specific, as for specific proposals, I'd like to suggest the following. What I mentioned before, if we talk about legislation and regulation, it will take too much time. So first thing, I don't know whether you will have the minutes of meeting or the protocol of the meeting, but for Federal Agency for Fisheries, I think that it should try to find a common ground between public organizations so that it is clear whom we should coordinate their work, the necessary quality of transportation that should be provided, and the traders, manufacturers, it's okay, but we need to understand whom we should be talking to and hold negotiation with. For us, the end client is the one who is the beneficiary of high-quality transportation. The second proposal is the following. The creation, based on the SOAP agreements, the union of railway operations and the head of the working group and the task force for container transportation and the public organization of fishermen, we have to specify the algorithm and the regime, and also to understand the depth of planning, the timeline that we have to work with, because now we face the full absence of the planning. We do not understand the volume, the turnover, the number of the rolling stock that will be used. Maersk is showing us a good example, but Maersk is a very large company and they have a unified technological chain. But Maersk is not a Russian company, and if they say that at a point of time they will say that we will not transport your fish, then we will be probably transporting it with using the Russian army, and starting with that, we can do it. And of course, there is a problem of sending this rolling stock to the Far East, and it has existed since the Soviet times, and we have to balance those cargo flows, but we have to start with the planning. I'd like it to be included into the minutes of meeting, and we have the respective document. The first deputy CEO, Mr. Kobzev, they have this planning document, and it is a matter of making this willful decision and to do that. It's not so complicated. Yes, thank you. There were some negotiations carried out at the platform of this forum, and you have to be careful and circumspect about that. We will not have the minutes of meeting or protocol, but we will adopt the guidelines after this roundtable. Dear colleagues, for the transport elements, but the question was raised, where are we bringing this production, these products, and do we have the necessary logistic complexes in the central region of Russia? And we invited Semeniha cluster, and we have a representative of this cluster. They are currently implementing this project, and I think this is one of the key points on this route from the sea to the end users. Mr. Filatov from Semeniha. Can I have a pointer, please? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will present a project of VTB real estate that we are implementing in Moscow region, talking about the delivery of products to end consumers, as it has been mentioned by colleagues. We should mention the Moscow region. This is the largest one in Russia in terms of consumption of fish, also the distribution of fish between other regions, and also as for the export and logistic support, storage support. And our project is aimed at facilitating those procedures. We are located 49 kilometers from the ring road of Moscow, and we are located in the area of Maximiha, the special economic zone. We have two anchor projects, the agro-production cluster Maximiha, and the project in close proximity, multi-mobile center Maksama, and it will ensure the necessary transportation support, and it will function in the synergy with our cluster. It will be a state-of-the-art container and railway terminal, and it will process also refrigerator containers with the onloading, offloading, the necessary shipment, seamless operations, and also being in line with the temperature regimes. And we have Kashirskaya Highway, M4 highway, and other main transportation routes, and it is quite close to the ring road. 120 hectares, this is the overall area, and 429,000 square meters will be the commercial area. As I've mentioned before, less than 1 year, the ruling of the government was adopted, and it was decided that the special economic zone will be established there, and the production company that will be located there, and probably some other sites will be chosen in accordance with the federal law 116, and they can get specific tax incentives, what is stipulated in the federal law 116. A few words about our concept. It will be the largest key hub of Moscow region, aimed at ensuring the consumption and the transportation flows for frozen and fresh products. It's a specialized cluster, specialized in fresh and frozen products, and we have all the necessary storage facilities, also the special facilities for fresh products and frozen ones, and fully equipped office for the work of the personnel. The resident has leased this premises, and they can organize their own logistics, and they have all the necessary utilities and all the capacities, all the water lines, also smaller capacity storage capacity for some companies engaged in wholesale, and we will have auxiliary infrastructure in place, cafes, dormitories, hotels, everything necessary for proper functioning. And during the pandemic, we faced this shortage of the personnel, and we tried to take that into consideration in our concept, and we are building a modern dormitory for HR, for personnel, and on this territory we will have a special customs point in order to exercise all the necessary procedures, and the core of the complex will be low temperatures storage facility that will be aimed at processing fish products for those who will be delivering those products to Moscow region for traders, for wholesalers. And we have 2 stages of the project. During the first stage, we will build all the necessary functional facilities in order for it to function as a one-stop shop business environment. And during the second stage, we will double the volume, and the adjacent territory we will be we will continue building retail chains, and we will engage them in those activities in order to have all the logistic legs provided for the stakeholders. And there will be a complex for larger users, and we offer land plots, we offer engineering, all the necessary utilities, and the territory management facilities. The core, as I've mentioned, it will be a low-temperature storage facility. It is the state-of-the-art facilities with all the mobile storage facilities, with the temperature control of -18 and -25 degrees for certain categories of products, and 97,000 pallets for this volume of tons, about 50,000 tons in the first line, and adjacent manufacturing blocks, so that traders and wholesalers companies can store the feedstock, and all those who will supply it via the railway, and then store that at the storage facilities. Each plot will be 40 square meters, equipped in accordance with all the standards, with the premises for the personnel.
And for them to start their own production, to process the foods to meet the requirements of the Moscow market. It's a single complex facility with the unified temperature mode, with the cooled forwarding facilities, and it is the state-of-the-art engineering solution to maintain the temperature of -18 to -25 to preserve the products. The zone is fitted with racks. There are office rooms in each unit. It is possible to set up the processing line and to arrange the small-scale production that is adjacent to the storage room. There are small wholesale zone, and it is meant for vegetables and fruit, first of all, but we have a showroom over there, and it is used not only to sell the products, but it is meant to present the products for the non-chain company, to make the stakeholders, the customers, familiar to that. Our key goal is for the cluster to become a key hub for the redistribution of veggies and dairy and fish, and to provide for the loading of the reverse flow of the freight with the products that is not presented in the Far East or in the Siberia or in the Urals. And it might be the fruit taken to Uzbekistan, from Uzbekistan, and taking the processed food back. In addition, I must say that we started the construction quite recently, and we are engaged in its promotion. It is the first exhibition that we have deployed our stand. It's a great exposition, well organized, thanks to the Federal Agency on Fishery, and we are convinced that we can add value to the fishery industry, and we have signed an MOU with our colleagues from the north, and I am sure that it will be mutually beneficial cooperation, and as a result, our end consumers will win. I visited the stand yesterday, and a question. I might have missed it. When are you planning to complete the construction? So what's the schedule? What's the timing? Commissioning it in Q1 of 2023. The construction period is quite long. We will try to expedite it, but one has to understand that it's a large-scale construction. Okay? And there is a mock-up at your stand, and the access roads are mostly automobile. What about the railroad? If we have to maintain the cycles from coast to the warehouse, then how far is the railroad? May I am the chair of the board of directors of Maksimiha. Our project is being developed in the Maksimiha Special Economic Zone by VTB group, and jointly we develop both the food warehouse and USADA multimodal center. It will be the multimodal and used for transshipment of different freights. The railroads are located in the close proximity. The multimodal center will provide the complex service, and the refrigerated containers will be taken all the way to the cluster, and the first container train will be handled in December 2022. And that is in a year, and the operational activity of the food cluster is the Q1 of 2023. Okay, thank you. Time to sum up, and I think we have understood it, that structurally the logistics chain does exist. We will have to sort out some of the issues. As far as the proposals made are concerned, we will make a list of the recommendations that were put on the table during the round table, and I am sure that the proposals will be constructive. Let's be optimistic, and I think the logistics will play an important role in both production and taking the high-quality stuff to the end consumers. Thank you. All the best to you.